I asked the team, like, wouldn't that be cool for April Fools if we did some sort of content with this random gadget? And a really creative guy on the team said, how about we create a baloney folder? And I was like, what is a baloney folder?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Radical Content. I think we're at episode 4 now. I'm so excited to have really a friend, a colleague, a former theme park social media person. What's up, Heather? How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm so excited. I'm excited to get a chance to talk to you today. And we won't go through your whole career, but I want to set up a little bit so people can understand kind of all the reasons why you're here. And you can fill in the holes. But Heather has been at, she's done agency side, but really the big ones that people are most interested in is you spent time with Disney. You spent time at Legoland. That's where we became friends when I was at Universal Parks. And then you went over to the motherland, my motherland, Texas, and spent some time with Chip and Joanna, with Magnolia Homes, and a little bit with the Magnolia Network. And then now we're at QVC. Did I get most of that right?
Yeah, you did.
Let's start with the brand of QVC. So we didn't kind of talk about this, but I think it's pretty obvious. This is where her and her team spends all of her time. But QVC today is not the QVC that we think about from the past. So I want to talk about brand building in relation to QVC. Obviously, many of us feel like we know this brand for the almost 40 years that it's been in existence, but it's kind of had its own resurgence into this digital and social world. Tell us a little bit about where you are today with the brand and how you've evolved from, I don't know what you'd say, the last 5 years, 10 years, and where is the QVC brand going?
Yeah. So I've, been with the brand for 2 years now, and I feel like even in the past 2 years, we've kind of evolved quite a bit, but QVC is interesting because when you think about it, we were like the first in live shopping. Live shopping is now a huge thing for many brands, and QVC really pioneered that many years ago. So we've really been, continuing to lean into that. But what I love about our brand is that we're more than just shopping, soulless shopping. We like to say we don't do soulless shopping. We really like to bring the story of every product to life. And then also our hosts are really just like the special sauce to QVC. If you've ever watched QVC before, you've probably fallen in love with some of our hosts. They just know how to connect with the audience and sell our products. So yeah, we're continuing to just be a leader in video commerce. Like I said, we do a lot of live streaming. And then I think just different than a typical retail brand, we do care a lot about the storytelling aspect of it, but then also we have these hosts that are really the powerhouse and personality of the brand, which I think is, a bit different than your typical retail brand.
Yeah, and I want to get into the hosts because at some point here in a few minutes, because they play a very interesting role. They play a bit of an influencer role for you guys, and I want to break open that a little bit. But so you've been there for a couple years. And did you have any sort of challenges in interjecting more of a social media first mindset into the organization? And that's fine because we all have in every stop that we have, right? But did you feel like it was something that they're like, no, we've got to figure this out. We've got to invest in it. Let's get someone like a Heather. Let's build a team and let's start moving in that direction. So how was that from that transition to kind of digital and then trying to think about what does social represent for the brand?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I came in, they had laid a pretty great foundation from a social media standpoint. The team is really robust, touching all platforms and strategists. And I mean, just the robustness of our social media program would probably make a lot of people go, holy cow, I can't believe all that team actually does, because we're working with thousands of brands. When I came in, and honestly, this is the same thing that I do with every brand I work for is I do a content audit first. That's the first thing I do, and really look at what's performing well for the brand and what's not performing well. And then really work with the team on, okay, how can we get rid of some of what is not working well for us and do more of what is. And so what I found was a lot of our longer form content wasn't performing as well on social, and our audience was really craving that raw behind the scenes. They wanted to get to know the hosts more. And so we've been continuing to evolve that piece of social as I've been here, and really just listening to the audience. I know it sounds like so stereotypical and everyone probably says that, but it's so true. I feel like if you're not listening to your audience, your social program is not going to be successful. One of the things I always say is you are going to obviously have to answer to your executives and your boss and all those things, but at the end of the day, the success of your social media program lives and dies by what your audience thinks, because they're the ones engaging with the content. And so they really get to deem what is successful for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. And it might be something that people in social media say all the time, but it doesn't make it less important, right? We have one or two bosses internally, but we have thousands of fans that kind of operate a little bit as people that we have to keep happy. And understanding kind of their needs, their wants, the things they're interested in, especially in this kind of line of QVC, is so important. And I love hearing you kind of unlock some of the things that they're interested in from a content standpoint, because I think that's what we're all trying to figure out. Not only like what do they like that we are doing now, but it's really trying to also stay on the front end of like, where's content development going? And how can we be kind of involved in that trend of how people are consuming content today? I want to shift to the audience a little bit, because when we talked, there was something you said that I thought was very interesting. I think it was something along the lines of everybody else is out there chasing Gen Z and millennials, and we are not.
Yeah.
And so tell us what that means, what the audience is, and how that extreme focus you guys have developed now has started to help you connect and tell better stories.
Yeah, so we actually target the 50 plus female at QVC. And so it's been interesting, right? Because all these brands are targeting Gen Z. But I actually am so excited by it because I feel like it's such a white space. And so it's been a challenge too to have to try to figure out, okay, what does the 50 plus woman want to see more of? And we've all on my team, done a little self-study, but also again, listening to our audience, but asking moms, grandparents, aunts, like, what are you interested in when it comes to content, and then listening to what they have to say. But one of the things that we just launched actually this past year in February is a series called Over 50 and Fabulous. And it has been like such a pleasure to work on. So really what the show is all about, it's on air, but then there's a digital and social only component to it as well. And it's hosted by Mally Roncal. She's a celebrity makeup artist, worked for so many big names like Beyonce, Jennifer Lopez, Celine Dion. And she has a line with us at QVC, and she's just a big personality and always brings positivity. But really the show is all about creating a community for 50 plus women and talking about things that might be taboo for them, whether that's, empty nesting, maybe it's going through a divorce or losing a parent, all of those things that they're dealing with. And sometimes those can feel isolating and lonely. And so we really get into deep conversation on the show about those issues. Mally brings in a guest every week that's 50 plus and just has that conversation. And then the other piece that I really love about it from a social standpoint is we let our audience chime in as well. So they're asking questions throughout the show, and giving their comments and their experience on whatever we're talking about. So that has been extremely successful for us. We didn't really know what to expect because it was new, but right away we were receiving hundreds of comments each week going, "This is my favorite show. I can't wait for this," every time it's on. And so we've continued to do it monthly. And then we have shorter limited series or limited runs on air. And we're going to
Yeah.
continue it next year just because it's been really cool to have those conversations that you wouldn't be able to have with a different age demographic.
Yeah, and I think something interesting. This is an audience that people don't spend a lot of time thinking about. So I love that someone is out there and they're like, no, you keep your millennials and your Gen Zs and your alphas and all these other things that we're making up. We want our 50 plus women. Like the 50 plus women listening to this right now are like, heck yes, finally. But I think the thing that's interesting about that, and it's something I've heard you say before, that the 50 plus woman today is way different than what you might even like from a historical perception think of, right? It's like, I think you said, it's the Jennifer Lopez's of the world. It's people that get it. It's people that are a little irreverent. It's people that are open to kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit and don't take things too serious. And so I think that is actually one area that, one of the things I love about social and content and brand building in the world that you and I exist in is we oftentimes get to help brands not take themselves too seriously, right? Shake off a little bit of the corporate jargon and be a little bit more personable and a little bit more approachable. And so I love to hear you kind of talk about how you're doing that for the 50 plus women. You're actually taking what is a stereotype of what it is and saying, no, in 2023, that's not who our audience is. It's actually those 45-year-old kind of, just to steal a movie line, bad moms from 5 years ago or 10 years ago that are now kind of graduated up into that area. Have you been able, other than the series you just talked about, has there been any other areas that you've been able to kind of push the boundaries of the brand, given this kind of more, this audience's comfortability with their interests?
Yeah, I think we're just always tapping into and honestly, the Over 50 and Fabulous show has helped us with some of that. We're always tapping into like what they're interested in. So it's like, we know that around the holidays, just speaking timely right now, we're talking about the holidays. We know that the moms are the ones who are like bringing the magic to Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that. So like, how do we tap into those things, making a house a home, tapping into the recipe content and shopping, and also just having fun, because like you were saying, this 50 plus audience isn't just like sitting on their couch eating donuts all day. Like they are the boss moms out in the workforce. They're, making things happen, and really just want to get across that life isn't over after 50. It's just the next chapter.
I hope not. I'm not a mom, but I am 44, so I'm getting closer to that 50.
Yeah. So to answer your question, we're just trying to tap into all the things that they're, dealing with and embracing right now in life, whether that's family or starting a job or retirement or having grandbabies. So how do we create content that touches upon those life experiences for them, whether that's sometimes sentimental, sometimes it's funny, but then a lot of it is connecting with our hosts as well, because they want to hear more from our host. They want to see the behind the scenes of QVC as well.
How do you stay kind of in that cultural zeitgeist of what matters to that audience? This is something that's come up, I swear, in every podcast that we've done so far, all four of them. But the interesting thing is this idea of you got to have people that are in the channels and or really connected to these audiences to understand the mindset. So how do you and your team try to find ways to stay ultra connected to this 50 plus audience in a way that you can be relevant, on trend, know what they're interested in, and things like that? Any tactical things that you guys do every week or every month?
That's a good question. So one of the things is we have a community manager on the team, and his role is obviously, to connect with the audience and respond back to them, but also to dig into what our audience is posting, what we're getting tagged in, what are those trends that we're seeing online. And to be honest with you, we don't tap into all of the trends because they might lean into more Gen Z. So I think it's important for anyone
Sure.
working in social for a brand that you don't hop on every single trend that you see. You have to see, does this make sense and is it relevant to our audience? So we'll often just have a discussion, whether it's over the phone or in person or on Teams, and say, hey, I see this is trending right now. Like, do you think it's something that would make sense for our audience, or could we shift it to make sense?
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of conversation, but a big piece for us is just that research that we're doing on our customer, and what they're saying, what they're tagging us in, what they're engaging in as well.
That's good. All right, so let's go back to the hosts a little bit. We haven't had a chance yet to break open the role of influencer marketing yet too much on Radical Content, and I know we'll have future episodes. We'll dive into that. But I know the hosts play a significant role for you guys, not just in expressing the personality of the brand of QVC, but also to expand both the reach and the audience building. So I went to a few of these individuals. I don't follow them, but I do now. A couple of them. Yeah. But I went to a few of their channels on Instagram. It looks like that's where it's mostly, it's a lot of, it's very hot there. And they've got thousands and thousands of followers. And when you add them all up together, I mean, you got millions of people that are following these. So let's talk first strategically about how you think about and then we'll get into kind of how you operate that as almost like its own influencer program. But how do you guys think about your host as extensions of the brand and reaching out, building audiences, and bringing people in as an extension of your social programs?
I mean, it's so true. We think of them as our own internal influencers because they're like almost like a news anchor would be. You see all these news anchors now that are building these social followings, and people are tuning in because they're so in love with that news anchor. And so, our hosts, like you said, are an extension of the brand, and each of them do have sort of a niche kind of that they focus on. For example, David Venable, which is one of our hosts that has been with us for a very long time. He's known for his culinary skills. And so a lot of people that follow him are interested in culinary and baking and all of those kind of things. Or we have Courtney Kandabi, and she's really into beauty and fashion. So it's important for us to tap into their different niches and then understand what our customer, like who from our customer profile is following each of them, and how can we kind of dive in more there. I don't know if I fully answered your question.
No, I mean, well, let me go into kind of the unlocking then. How do you then leverage that, right? Like they're out there doing their things. I'm assuming you're not managing and creating all of their content, but you're maybe influencing. So tell me a little bit of the activation of the influencer program with your talent.
Yeah. So they, do manage a lot of their social personality on their own, right? They might be on vacation, so they're posting from vacation or at home. Because again, if you think about the influencers that you follow, you don't want to see them when they're just selling. You want to see them with their family and get to know them personally and their hobbies and all of that. But then, when we are planning from a monthly standpoint of like, here are the key priorities and initiatives for the month from a company perspective, who can we tap into that makes sense to speak to that from a social standpoint? We might have hosts that are really interested in certain gadgets, and being with the company for so long, not me, but some of the other people on my team will know, like, hey, this host really loves XYZ. We should, try to create some content with them around that. So it's definitely understanding the host and each of their personalities and their niches. So we work really closely with the host management team as well to say, hey, we think such and such a host would be great to talk about this product or this kind of initiative. What do you think? So we do work with them from that standpoint. And it's tough too because they have a really intense schedule on air as well. So it's tough trying to balance social and on air and all of those things, but they are so important to QVC as a whole and just building that brand loyalty because they are so beloved and they're the reason why people watch QVC.
Yeah, I was talking to someone a few weeks ago about the importance of social and or digital advertising driving tune in for TV.
Yeah.
Right. So in the beginning, there was internal discussions, and in every TV network, right? With, well, hold on a second, we can't put that on YouTube. Well, then we're taking away from people that we're trying to get to come watch the network, right? I remember when SNL finally just agreed and started putting all their content on YouTube. And now I think I even saw something on LinkedIn where they've got like, I don't know, like 100 million like views a month on YouTube. And they're getting like, a tenth of that on a Saturday night. And you're trying to figure out the business model for content versus TV. And, QVC, I'm sure, had some of those challenges as well, right? They've got a TV station and network, and then when do we go over the top? What are we doing on YouTube? How did all that start to come together? And how does QVC now think about the role that social and digital play in feeding the mothership of the TV network, and vice versa, the TV network feeding the online communities and the relationship side that comes from social and digital?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there's been a lot of momentum with that over the past couple of years as well, even online. So if you go to QVC.com, we actually do live streams right within our site as well, which is really cool because they've kind of given the keys over to a lot of our vendors, so to speak. So if you're, could be Barefoot Dreams or Dyson, you might go on our site and they're doing a tutorial on how to use the Dyson Airwrap. So our site is really alive with maybe a lot of the things that you might see on air, but more personal too, because when you have those live streams, you're able to comment and talk with whoever is. So there's definitely a lot of integration when it comes to on air and digital and social. How do they all marry together? And then even from digital to social, I actually just got off a meeting with our digital team because we work really closely together on, okay, is this live stream just going to live on QVC.com? Or is it also going to live on social? And if it does live on social, what platform does it, work best for? Is it Facebook? Is it TikTok? And that's all based on different audiences. So there's a lot of strategy that goes into all of that, right? Because you have to make strategic decisions on where things live. But yeah, I think the company has come a long way, even in the past 2 years, of just really making sure everything feels cohesive from our website to social to on air, and finding the unlocks, so to speak.
And it's interesting because now everyone has, I feel like I even saw some of the stuff that you guys say, like watch anywhere, anytime, or something like that. I feel like all
we have an app,
networks that have apps and websites.
Yeah.
But I challenge, the listeners out there, go to QVC.com and check it out. It does feel like an Amazon with a content like component of it. Like you guys obviously haven't left the main core principle of this, like, we don't want to just be and I'm putting some words in your mouth maybe, but we don't want to just be a commerce place that is just, here's 6 photos, buy it because of the value. You want to tell that story a little bit. So how has the storytelling that's always been a part of the original idea of what QVC was.
Yeah.
How does that influence how you guys tell stories in social and digital, or does it not? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think it's extremely helpful as someone. So I was speaking on another podcast recently, and I was talking about any brand that I've worked for in the past 12 years has always had an aspect of storytelling. Like I don't work for a brand if there's not an aspect of storytelling, or they're just bringing joy, because I don't think I would bring a ton of value to them. So to me, QVC was really enticing because they already had that component. I think the challenge on social is, how do you tell those stories quickly? Because on air, they could have an hour-long show and sell and tell the different stories, but on social you don't have that much time, right? So we're constantly having to figure out how to tell that story quickly, get to the meat really quickly. I'm sure you've heard, if you worked in social, like, you got to get to the meat in the first 3 seconds. So yeah, really the challenge is, how do we tell that story quickly, but efficiently? And a lot of times it's different on every platform, right? We might say, hey, on Facebook, this particular story of a brand works better as a live stream, and maybe we have a conversation with a brand founder. But on TikTok, it works better in a 30-second video. So again, more strategic decisions from the team of the different platforms and what form of content best tells different stories.
I love where you were landing, and it's a great segue to talk about you guys are doing 50 plus women content on TikTok. So you're there, it's happening. I'd love to hear you. You kind of talked a little bit about kind of that transition from long form, your history on TV and what you do, into short form in kind of general terms. What were some of the I don't know, guardrails, best practices, principles? I don't know what the right word is, but what was some of the things you were talking about internally as you were thinking about, okay, how does QVC show up on TikTok?
Yeah. In our TikTok, I will say our strategy is fairly new. Over the past 2 years, we've kind of really built it. And so we're kind of still in talks about what our strategy is and continuing to evolve it, and how, again, going back to that 50 plus female, how do we really lean into that as our strategy on TikTok? And I think one of the things for us is, it was really important to keep true to our target audience. So that's something that we continue to talk about as a team. Does this make sense for the 50 plus audience? Yes, it might be trending on TikTok right now, but does this lean more Gen Z? If we were to post this on Facebook, would our audience really understand what we're talking about? So really, keeping true to speaking to that 50 plus audience on every platform we're on. The cool thing about TikTok that a lot of people don't know actually is the 50 plus audience is continuing to grow on that platform, which is really
That's how all social platforms kind of go, right? It's like,
yeah,
it starts with the kids, and then the grown-ups come in and ruin it and make it not cool, and then the kids move on to something else.
I don't know. I think the grown-ups make it cooler. Some of those 50 plus creators, I'm like, wow.
I guess that's true. I guess that's true. I know that the grown-ups killed Facebook. I don't think they took out Snapchat. I think they kind of got in and they're like, hey, this is not for us. We're out.
I've had
I think
Snapchat
that stayed
myself.
Yeah, that stayed pretty young. But I don't know about TikTok. It's still yet to be determined. But no, I mean, I get that, right? Like, and I think that's actually an interesting topic here. Let's break this over. This was not one of my questions. And I look back at my days at Universal. We took too long to launch TikTok. Sorry for my team that might be out there listening right now. But because we were too precious with it. We wanted to come out with this perfect strategy. We probably wanted to defeat Disney, and they were doing a great job at TikTok, and they still are. And I've got friends down there. They could hear that compliment and enjoy it. But how do you decide whether it's just like, you know what, we got to just go and kind of take advantage of this and learn as we go, versus hold on, time out. We've got no strategy. Let's wait and create a strategy. There's really two sides to the coin. And I think when either of them are done well, I don't think one's right and one's wrong. I think we waited too long to launch TikTok because we were a little precious about it.
Yeah.
But I remember a few years ago, there was an intern that wanted to get us on Snapchat, and like the stuff he was coming up with was not like usable. And I think we needed to pause, and we did pause. And so that one I think was good. So you never really know. How do you think about that when your team's coming to you and saying, oh, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this? What's going on in your mind? And maybe even some scenarios of when this actually happened.
Yeah. So like I said, our TikTok strategy isn't that, old, but we were still posting beforehand. And I will say, to your point, I don't necessarily think there's a right or wrong way, but I am kind of glad that we started posting because we started to build our audience. So then when we really came out with that great content, it hit. So last year, we actually had a video go viral on April Fools, and it was really fun. So the stereotype, sometimes we have stereotypes at QVC, and one of those is that we sell a lot of just gadgets that are kind of random. And so I asked the team, like, wouldn't that be cool for April Fools if we did some sort of content with this random gadget? And a really creative guy on the team said, how about we create a baloney folder? And I was like, what is a baloney folder? And within days, he worked with our team, to not the social team, but our production team, to create a contraption that folded pieces of bologna to make a sandwich. And so we made this short set QVC cell piece of content with it, and it went viral because it was hilarious that we were selling this machine that just folded bologna. So,
that's good.
Had we not, though, had already been posting and built that following, I'm not sure if it necessarily would have gone viral, because at least we had established a decent sized audience before then.
Yeah, and you kind of touch on another point in there. By the way, I got to go check out the baloney folder. But you touch on another thing there, and I see a lot of people saying this in the small business entrepreneur world, but not as much in the enterprise kind of content and marketing world. But it's this idea of just go make things today, make things tomorrow, make things the next day. Don't wait till you have your perfect content strategy. Yeah. Don't wait till you've got your editorial calendar built. You will learn as you go. You will get feedback. No one will like it. It'll be, Mr. Beast is now everywhere talking about like how he knew nothing when he first got it started. It was just him talking into a camera, and it was mostly nonsense. And that's where he learned. That's where he sharpened. That's where he found out. And anybody that's worked in social media for a while, like you or me, not putting you in my age bracket, but you've been in this for a little bit. We remember the things that we did that were bad.
Oh yeah.
I remember, I don't know if I've said this, told this story on the show yet, but we did a live stream one time when I was at EA Sports, and it was with the president of EA Sports at E3. And we had the whole thing set. We had all the cameras all ready. It was kind of a low budget thing because the social content team was doing it, but it still was like, it looked cool. It was for the fans. It was for the community. And this is early aughts. Like this is like 07, 08. And we were still figuring out what social media was at the time. And we did it. The interview was great. I think I did the interview. My buddy was doing behind the scenes. And afterwards we were like high-fiving each other. And then another guy was like, none of that went out over the air. And we were like, what? And he was like, no. And so we just like looked around and just tried to hope that no one knew what just happened. And I'm sure I'm outside of a tenure from EA to where no one's going to get in trouble. Everyone's left and gone on to great things. But we were just learning, and we were just kind of figuring things out. And we didn't have the microscope that we have today.
Yeah.
But because of that ability to not that that's good, by the way, anyone leading a social team, please don't think that this is an excuse to not have a live stream go out over the air. Super big mistake on my behalf.
But I'm sure you learned from that.
Oh my gosh. That's what I'm saying. Like the things that we learned because we were given space to fail and try and test and move and post, literally shapes the way I am today as a leader in social and content. So I love the your successful story of your bologna sandwich and my really bad failure at EA Sports. All
Yeah,
right,
it's a
so
lot of
let's.
testing and learning. I feel like that's what social is, even still. I mean, yeah, I started in social when I always say back when I started, people were like, "You work on Facebook? Like that's a job?" Like no one thought social
No
media
one.
was a job, including myself. I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I got this." Um, but it's so much even now. It's testing and learning, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, but there's a lot of content that my team works on and I'm like, "This is going to crush it." And then it's a dud.
Yeah.
Or the opposite. I'm like, that's not going to do well. And it kills it. So there's definitely, of course, with time, you kind of understand what's going to work and what's not going to work, but there's always those outliers. So I do think testing and learning is still important.
So let's go back into kind of the production side of the business that you kind of exist in. You guys have a ton of content going out the door, and you
Yeah.
are a content company, so that helps. A lot of people don't have any capabilities from a production or a producing or concept creation, right? Scripting things out. I mean, that is bread and butter to QVC. But how do you find a way to operate all of the stuff that's got to get out the door, and still on strategy, on brand, on tone, and keep it consistent? I imagine there's pretty heavy content development process, infrastructure, and things like that. So what are some of those things that you found to be just paramount into how you operate the team and the day-to-day?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think planning is super important. As basic as that sounds, I've gotten onto some social media teams, not this one, in the past where they're just like the day of deciding what they're going to post. And that is such a recipe for disaster because it's not going to allow you time to really think about the content, look at it. Does this make sense? So,
How
we're
far out do you guys plan? Is it months?
Yeah, we're planning about a month in advance, but then we
Yep.
do plan out further for bigger initiatives that we know are
Sure,
going to
sure.
come, right? Every year we know we're going to have to do something for holiday, things like that. But
Right.
from like a key company priority, we're planning out monthly. So that's a big thing. So we meet monthly and go through, okay, these are the big company initiatives that we have coming down. What of these make sense from a social standpoint? Because we know we can't promote everything, right? We're working with thousands of brands. There's no way we could possibly fit that all on a content calendar. So we really have to be selective and strategic on these are the pieces of content, the products or the ideas that make the most sense for this month. And then our strategists on the team really go and ideate what that piece of content would be and who would produce that. So we do have a content creator on the team. There's other team members that kind of dabble in creating content. Like you said, we have a full, production company in-house, so to speak. And then we do work with a lot of our vendors as well, because a lot of our vendors create really awesome content that we can share to help support them. And then we also work with our hosts and influencers as well. So
Y'all have so much content. You
yeah.
have many people have a content problem. You guys don't have a content problem. You have probably a programming problem, which is how do you and what do you fit in and how do you fit it in and all of that.
Yeah, and just making sure that the content we're getting is social first. That is, again, such a basic concept, but it's really hard to understand if you don't work in social because you
Yeah.
can have a really beautiful movie or commercial and it just doesn't translate on social. And I think even over the past few years, raw content has really been the star of the show. People just want to see the brand, the creator as they are. No production, no blurring of the face. They want to see everything
Yeah.
as it is. So that's hard to get.
Have you done anything internally to try and influence that trend and or best practice, or is it something that you just do in more one-off conversations with colleagues and leaders and other things?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is continuing to educate. So The one thing I found throughout my career that's my best friend is reporting. Because reporting takes opinions off the table. So if you go into a room filled with executives that say, "Hey, we really love this beautifully shot commercial. We want it to go on social." And I can go back to you and say, "Hey, we've tried that before and look how much engagement it got versus this piece of content." My opinion and their opinion are now off the table. It's just the numbers. And so that has been really powerful from an education standpoint, not just from leadership, but even working with other creatives that are working on our content, whether it's a production company or a content creator. If you can go back and make sure you're looking at the data, then you're more likely to not make a mistake again that might not give you as much engagement or reach, whatever you're looking for.
As you're looking forward into the future for QVC and kind of seeing where brands are going, creators are going, social media platforms are going, there's a lot of shifts and evolutions from where we have been in the past. Where is an area that is top of mind for you, and maybe something you're talking to your team about right now that you're like, we got to find a way to solve this, push into this more, do more of this, whether it's a content type, a channel, or even just a mindset shift that you're trying to, push into kind of the social media team?
Yeah, there's a few things. One, from a platform perspective, I would say is Pinterest. I know a lot of brands are already there, and we are there too, but there's definitely more we could be doing on Pinterest. So that's something we're really keeping an eye on through the rest of this year in 2024.
What can I pause you and ask you what's the insight that's driving that? Because I go to Pinterest when I need like a new outfit.
Yeah. So
but I'm not probably their target.
So we actually found that we have millions and millions of viewers going to our Pinterest page every month. And there's just so much more we can be doing to give them the content that they're looking for. We've, met with Pinterest, and a lot of the categories that people are wanting fall within something that makes sense for QVC. So home decor, recipes, all those things. We have a lot of resources for them that I don't feel like we were utilizing efficiently on Pinterest. So we're going to definitely tap into that more. I still think raw content isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So continuing to lean into that, and just content that brings joy to people or some sort of value. So again, we know that we're going to have priorities in terms of products and sales and all of that. But at the end of the day, the brands that you're following, you want to follow them because they're bringing you some sort of value, whether you're learning something, they're making you laugh, maybe making you ugly cry, but some sort of value. So I really just challenge the team. When we look at our monthly calendar, is this something that would entertain you? Is this something that would bring you joy? If that's not seen a lot on our content calendar, we should probably be rethinking the content that we're putting out.
Yeah. So last one here to close this out, and I think this is a fun one. And if you need a minute to think about it, I want to get a good answer for this. So you've been in social for a bit now.
Yeah.
Me as well. And so I have a lot of things that kind of fit into this category. What is one thing that you used to think was true, and maybe it was true at that time, but your opinion has changed in today's world? So it's something that maybe you believed in, and I can give an example if you want me to.
Yeah, give me an example.
One? All right, so this is one that I don't love owning up to, but look, the purpose of Maverick is because we believe there's an opportunity to engage first, to connect first. And we believe that brands that do that will build audiences, and those audiences you can build really any business that you want to on top of it. And so along the way, I've probably poo-pooed the world of the start-stop campaign or paid media. And I understand there's a tremendous value in both of those things. But I just feel like that the balances are offset, and things like, building audiences, creating content that's entertaining, engaging, loyalty, relationships, and creators, I believe is the tip of the spear for the future. And I've been in environments where just getting one piece of key art, blasting media around it and push it out and then fold it up and move on is the way that marketing is done. It's
Yeah.
not the way I think marketing is done. And it put me into a place where I probably discounted the power of tremendous targeting and, and digital advertising. And so that is something I've had to
Yeah.
eat some crow on over the years to understand. It's not about, performance versus, but versus kind of loyalty and relationship and engagement marketing. I actually believe it's both of them together. I would put, for me, I would put engagement first, and media is the way to try to find where that spider web can be pushed into the networks and in the communities. So that's an
That's a
example
good one. That's a
from
good
me.
one. Okay,
Yeah.
so one for me would probably be, and I do think this has come with like the shift in social media over the years, but I used to really feel like everything had to be aesthetically pleasing on social.
So this raw video and raw content, you're like, oh, okay, I guess we're gonna do
but now
this.
I love it, right? Because I want to see the raw content too. If it's too
Yeah.
produced, I don't want to see it either. So I get it, but I used to be like, it's got to be polished. It's got to look pretty. The colors got to go well together. When you look at the feed, it's got to all match. And it's just not that way anymore, right? No one's going to your Instagram feed and like, people are seeing a majority of their content in their own feeds. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of this aesthetically pleasing content is starting to shift away from being as successful as it used to be.
Well, and you have an interesting. I mean, we talked about your career in the beginning, but you have an interesting career where theme parks. It was all about experience, and it was
Yeah.
very young, right, at Legoland. And then I imagine this design stuff you're talking about really came to life when you were with Chip and Joanne
Yes.
and the group at Magnolia, because there's so much about aesthetic and design and feel and emotive.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know the insides like you do, but I've watched about every episode, so I can get kind of a little bit of a feel of kind of their vibe. And then now you're at QVC, which like I'm sure it's high design and like fashion, but it's more about kind of just feel and comfortability and approachability. And so I'm guessing that in each of those stops, you've taken away different like tools in your toolbox of social. So maybe to close out, rather than me put those words in your mouth, tell me a little bit about how each of those, at least those three main stops, have kind of influenced your thinking on social, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, social in general, or do you mean in terms of aesthetic?
I think social in general is fine.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I do feel like all of those companies I was at in kind of different social landscapes. It's evolved since I've left each of those companies, and the audiences were quite different, right? You mentioned with Legoland, our target audience was kids ages 2 to 12, which how do you market to them on social media, which is tricky. So you kind of are marketing to the parent, but you want to do it in a way that's speaking like a kid. So that was very interesting, and you want to actually market the fun. So there was a lot of aesthetic that went along with that, right? Because it's got to look fun in order for it to translate well. So that job there really shaped my love of joy that came from social. And that was as well as working with Disney, right? How do you work for a brand and convey that on social media? How do you convey joy and value to the customer, whoever you're talking to? And so that's where I really fell in love with that piece, and it's carried through. Like I said, I've continued to look for that in whatever brand I've worked for. And then moving on to Magnolia, gosh, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about projecting feeling into social through words, through copy, and through visuals as well. So if you go on to Magnolia's social, there's a lot of what we used to call mood lines when you think about social. So it's not like buy this chair, it's something about the light shining through the window and like how that makes you feel. So you are all of a sudden, given this emotion that makes you want to be in this setting that we're showing you with this chair. And now all of a sudden I've got to have this chair because I want that feeling. So I learned a lot about that. And again, with the joy, everything that Magnolia did and still does to this day, they want there to be a sense of joy, a sense of feeling at home. Magnolia Network's tagline is television that feels like home. So storytelling there. And then moving on to QVC, I've just learned the power of storytelling yet again, and then the connection with personalities, because it's so cool to see how our customer is so connected with our host. Anytime we do like a live audience show, they come in and they're best friends with our host. They spend their Friday evenings with us, and that's really cool to see, and just continuing to share the joy that our hosts bring on air and translating that to social media, but then continuing on that storytelling that QVC is so well known for.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we went through that, because I think that there are so many different things. Even as I'm out now, left Universal and in Maverick, and having different discussions with different brands, it unlocks a different side of how you think, and different opportunities and different ways to reach customers. And so, no, I'm glad you had a chance to go through that. Heather, I'm so pumped. This was so much fun. It was a good time. I got to go check out the latest TSV over on QVC to see what the deal is. But it's just been such a pleasure both getting to know you the past few years, but to also have you on Radical Content. I really, really appreciate the time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a fun convo for sure. Yes, go check out the TSV, start your holiday shopping.
That's right. Check out the baloney folder. We got to do that. So we have a lot of to-dos out of this podcast. All right. Thank you to Heather. Thank you to Lauren for helping produce this show today. Another Radical Content in the books. Newsletters coming out next week, so we'll keep the content coming, but appreciate you guys listening and following along. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, everybody.